The Lizzie Borden house. Crime and haunting. There are places that should never be visited. Places where time doesn't follow the same rules. Where darkness seems to have a life of its own, and where the past never truly sleeps. The Lizzie Borden house is one of those places. For many, it's just a macabre tourist destination, a bed and breakfast for the curious and ghost hunters. But for those who spend a night there, the story is different. What happens inside the house goes beyond tales of hauntings or old rumors. There are secrets hidden beneath that roof that should never be disturbed. I thought I was strong. I thought I was just a skeptic, trying to prove to myself that fear was irrational, that it all boiled down to stories told to impress. But that night, something showed me I was wrong. Very wrong. It wasn't a random noise, a door creaking on its own, or a chill down my spine for no reason. No, it was something real. Something that saw me before I even noticed its presence. Something that was waiting for me. And now, even after leaving that place behind, I feel like I'm still not alone. If you think urban legends are just stories, think again. Some stories are alive. Some wait in the dark, hoping someone curious enough will come close. I was that person. I entered that house. And now, I'll tell you what happened. But before I continue, I need to ask you, would you have the courage to spend a night at the Lizzie Borden house? Because if you do, be prepared. Not everyone leaves the same way they entered. The house seemed harmless at first glance. An old, well-preserved building that hid a gruesome history within its walls. The discreet sign indicated that this was the famous Lizzie Borden bed and breakfast, a place where the brave spent the night in search of supernatural experiences. But for me, it was more than just morbid tourism. I wanted to understand, to feel for myself what really happened there. The air around felt dense, heavy, as if something invisible was lurking, just waiting for the right moment to manifest. I hesitated at the door for a moment, feeling a shiver run down my spine. As I entered, I was greeted by the woody smell of the place, mixed with a faint aroma of old wax and mildew. The decor was from the time of the crime, with Victorian furniture and a thick carpet that muffled footsteps. Every painting, every piece of furniture, every detail seemed frozen in time, as if the ghosts of the past were still there, watching. The host greeted me with a polite smile, but his eyes seemed burdened with knowledge he preferred not to share. As he explained the rules of place, no leaving the rooms after midnight, no provoking the spirits, no taking anything from the house, my mind fixated on one question. Why do these rules exist? Climbing the stairs of my room, I felt the wood creak under my feet, emitting cracks that sounded like whispers. The hallway was lit by an aged chandelier, casting distorted shadows on the walls. The feeling of being watched intensified, and a slight chill settled on the back of my neck. The door in my room creaked as it opened, and the space greeted me with an unusual coldness, as if no one had slept there in a long time. I closed the door behind me, taking a deep breath. Something was wrong. Something in that house didn't want me there. The silence in the house was oppressive. The kind of silence that doesn't comfort, but suffocates. Lying in bed, I tried to ignore the feeling that there was something there with me. The walls seemed to breathe, emitting soft cracks, almost as if they were whispering. I closed my eyes for a moment, but my mind wouldn't shut off. The thought that I was sleeping exactly where Lizzie Borden once stood bothered me in a way I couldn't explain. The mattress was soft, but there was something strange about it, a faint metallic smell that seemed to come from the sheets. Iron, blood, the idea made me shiver. I turned to my side, trying to push away the disturbing thoughts. But then I heard it, a low, dragging sound, as if something was being pulled down the hallway. My entire body froze. I held my breath, listening intently. The sound stopped. Then a light knock on the door. 3 short, sharp knocks. My heart raced. Should I answer? Get up and open the door? I stayed still, waiting. Nothing. The silence returned, but now it felt heavier. After a few minutes, I let out the breath I'd been holding and tried to convince myself it was just the old house creaking. Yes, just that. I turned to the other side of the bed, closing my eyes again. But then, the closet door slowly opened with a prolonged creak. My blood ran cold. My instincts told me not to look. but my eyes moved on their own. The darkness inside the closet was deeper than usual, like a black hole. I felt something watching me from there. The shadow didn't move, but I knew it was alive. I squeezed my eyes shut, forcing my mind not to panic. Tomorrow morning, this will seem silly, I thought, but something inside me already knew the truth. I wasn't alone in that room. The night seemed endless. Each minute dragged on as if time had slowed down inside that house. After what happened with the closet, I decided not to move. I lay still, motionless, trying to control my breathing. The silence seemed to carry an invisible presence, something I couldn't see but could feel. I tried to convince myself it was all in my imagination, but the weight in the air was real. The air was dense, cold, as if something had drained all the energy from the room. Then the noise came again, not a creak of wood or a distant sound from the old house. No, something was breathing in the corner of the room. At first, I thought my mind was playing tricks on me until I noticed a rhythmic pattern. A soft sigh, followed by a pause. Then another, as if someone was there, standing in the darkness, watching. I tried to move, but my body felt paralyzed. Fear gripped me in a way I had never felt before. Then something changed. The breathing grew closer. My heart pounded so hard I could hear in my ears. I didn't want to look. I didn't want to confirm what my mind already knew. But at some point my eyes opened and I saw it. In the reflection of the mirror beside the bed, there was a silhouette, tall, thin, distorted. Its eyes, hollow and empty, seemed to pierce through me. But the worst part was how it moved. Not naturally, but as if it were being pulled by invisible strings, twisting slightly like a broken marionette. The air grew heavier, and the metallic smell returned, now stronger. My body finally reacted, and I closed my eyes, pulling the covers over me like a child. But I knew it was no use. That thing was there, watching me, waiting. Time inside that room seemed to have lost all logic. The night dragged on, and I didn't know if minutes or hours had passed. I kept my eyes closed, refusing to look at the mirror again. The room was cold, but my skin burned, as if something was pressing me into mattress. Then the sound came. Low, hoarse, impossible to ignore. A whisper, faint at first, but distinct enough to know it wasn't my imagination. "You are here?" Each word was spoken slowly, as if the thing speaking was savoring the syllables. My blood ran cold. My mind screamed at me not to react, to pretend I hadn't heard. But the sound was close, too close, as if someone was right beside my bed. Survival instinct took over. I took a deep breath and, in a sudden movement, turned on the bedside lamp. The room was bathed in shaky, yellowish glow. Nothing. No shadow, no figure, just a pristine room. But the mirror still reflected something that shouldn't be there. The silhouette, it hadn't disappeared. It was still there, motionless, staring at me. But the worst part wasn't seeing it. It was realizing that its mouth was moving. There was no sound, but it was whispering something repeatedly, as if reciting a twisted prayer. My eyes locked onto the image, and that's when I realized the silhouette in the mirror wasn't across the room. It was behind me. The whisper returned, now closer, as if it were right in my ear. This time, I couldn't take it. I jumped out of bed and ran out of the room, not caring about anything but escaping that place. My feet hit the cold floor of the hallway as I ran, feeling cold sweat dripping down my neck. The silence of the house had been replaced by a low hum, something almost imperceptible but resonating inside my head. Each step made the floor creak, as if the entire house was waking up. I just wanted to get out, to find someone, anyone, but as I moved forward, I noticed something strange. The hallway seemed longer than it should be. The doors to the other rooms, which had been close before, now seemed to stretch away, as if the house was expanding around me. The hum grew louder, a muffled, distant sound, but familiar. A laugh, not a loud laugh, but something restrained, almost mocking. My instinct screamed at me not to look back, but morbid curiosity was stronger. I turned my head, and then I saw it. At the end of the hallway, where there had been only darkness before, a figure stood. Short, motionless, wearing an old, stained dress. The face was hidden by disheveled hair, but I knew it was watching me. Its image seemed distorted, as if slightly out of focus. The laughter stopped, replaced by the sound of bare feet on wood. It began to move. My heart nearly exploded in my chest. I ran with all the strength I could muster, ignoring the exhaustion and desperation. But no matter how fast I ran, the stairs never seemed to get closer. It was as if I was trapped in a never-ending nightmare, condemned to walk that hallway forever. The doors to the rooms began to tremble, as if something was trying to get out. One of them suddenly opened, but I didn't wait to see what was inside. I kept running, feeling its presence getting closer. And then, out of nowhere, silence. One more step, and suddenly I was at the stairs. The hallway seemed normal again, but I knew it wasn't over. My feet almost stumbled on the first steps. I didn't look back. I didn't want to confirm if it was still there. Instinct said it was. The house felt different now, as if it closed in around me. The air was heavy, filled with the smell of old wood and dampness. But there was something else, a sweet, sickly smell, like flowers left to rot. The only light came from the living room downstairs, faint and flickering, as if it was about to go out. The old clock on the wall showed 3 a.m., but something was wrong. The hands weren't moving. The stairs seemed longer than before, but I finally reached the lower floor. The living room was exactly as I remembered. The dusty Victorian furniture, the thick carpet muffling footsteps. But the energy of the place was different, a feeling of waiting, of anticipation. The clock remained still, its hands frozen in time. And then, without warning, it began to move, but not forward. The minute hand spun backward, slowly at first, then faster, until it became a blur. The ticking sound became a loud echo, reverberating through the room, filling every space with something that wasn't sound but presence. Then came the knock, a dull thud on the front door, not an insistent sound but firm, as if someone knew exactly that I was there. My eyes fixed on the doorknob, expecting it to turn at any moment. But what made me step back wasn't the door. It was a reflection in the glass. Outside, under the faint light of the street lamp, a silhouette stood. Small, fragile, the stained dress, the disheveled hair covering its face. It was her, but now, her feet weren't touching the ground. The silhouette outside didn't move. It didn't need to. Its mere presence was enough to fill my chest with suffocating terror. The glass on the door was old, slightly fogged, but I could see that the figure's contours were wrong. It seemed to flicker, as if it wasn't entirely there. My eyes couldn't focus on it properly, like an image on a TV out of tune. My breath caught in my throat when I noticed its lips moving, whispering something I couldn't hear. Then, a scratching sound came from the glass, as if short nails were scraping the surface. Low, insistent, rhythmic. The figure didn't move, but its fingers did, slowly, as if drawing something on the other side. My hands were trembling, but I still had enough control to step back. One step, then another. Every inch I moved away seemed to increase the weight of the air around me. But when I reached the middle of the room, the sound stopped, and absolute silence took over, dense and unreal. That's when I heard it. The voice didn't come from outside. It came from behind me. Weak, almost a whisper, but close enough to feel the warmth on the back of my neck. You have been here before. My body refused to react. My brain screamed at me to run, but my legs seemed rooted to the ground. The glass on the door began to tremble, as if it was about to shatter. I closed my eyes, bracing for the worst. But when I opened them, the silhouette was gone. The glass was clean, no marks, no traces that anyone had been there. But I knew it wasn't over. The silence persisted, but now it wasn't just the absence of sound. It was something alive, pulsating, as if the house was holding its breath with me. The clock, which had been spinning backward, was now still again. Everything seemed untouched, too normal, but I knew it wasn't. My entire body screamed to get out, but something held me back, an invisible force, as if I had crossed a line that couldn't be undone. That's when I noticed the door at the end of the hallway. It hadn't been there before, or maybe it had, and I just hadn't noticed. Unlike the other doors in the house, this one was older, made of dark wood with a rusted iron handle. A chill ran down my spine as I noticed the scratches covering its surface, as if someone or something had tried to get out. My hand trembled as I turned the handle. Locked. But before I could step back, something on the other side responded. A single, sharp knock, strong enough to make the wood vibrate. Adrenaline made me step back, but my feet were stuck to the floor. Another knock, then another. Something inside wanted out. My breathing grew shallow, and every cell in my body begged me to run. But then came the sound that made my blood freeze. A metallic click. The lock turned on its own, as if the door was unlocking itself. The sound of the internal mechanisms moving echoed through the entire house. And then, slowly, the door began to open. The door opened slowly, creaking as if resisting its own movement. My entire body was tense, and I realized I was holding my breath. On the other side, the darkness seemed denser than it should be. It wasn't just the absence of light. It was something tangible, heavy, as if the air inside that room had been dead for a long time. A strong smell of burnt wood and rusted iron escaped the opening, along with a wave of cutting cold that made my skin crawl. I didn't want to look, but I did. The room was small, but it seemed to stretch beyond logical dimensions. The walls were covered in faded wallpaper, stained with dark marks that looked like handprints. In the center of the room, there was a rocking chair, and in it, something was sitting. A skeletal figure, wrapped in dark rags, its head slightly tilted to the side. But the worst part was the face, or the lack of it. Where eyes, a nose, and a mouth should have been, there was only a smooth, pale surface, like melted wax. Its chest rose and fell irregularly, as if it were breathing. My legs were paralyzed. Every instinct told me to run, but the air around me seemed to have solidified, as if I were being pulled into that room. The creature began to move. Slowly. Its head turned first, at an impossible angle, until it faced me. Even without eyes, I knew it was seeing me. A mouth began to form, the skin tearing open into a wide, grotesque smile. A guttural sound escaped it. Something inhuman. The chair began to rock, creaking ominously. And then, in a sudden movement, the thing stood up. The creature advanced. It didn't walk like a normal person, but moved irregularly, as if each part of its body was being pulled by invisible forces. My heart felt like it wanted to tear out of my chest. The air grew dense, as if I were being suffocated by something invisible. My legs finally reacted, and I stepped back out of the room, feeling pure desperation take over. But before I could run, the door slammed shut on its own, with such force that the entire house shook. The silence returned. A sickly, heavy silence, as if everything was waiting for my next move. The clock on the wall, which had been still, now showed exactly 3:33 a.m. The hands trembled slightly, as if at any moment they would spin out of control again. My breathing was shallow, and I felt that if I didn't leave right then, something worse would happen. I ran. I crossed the living room, past the front door, and only stopped when I reached the middle of the street. The house remained there, imposing and motionless, as if nothing had happened. The city lights were beginning to tinge the horizon, and for a brief moment, I wondered if it had all been real. But then, something caught my attention. In the window on the upper floor, a silhouette was watching me. Small, wearing a stained dress, disheveled hair covering its face. My lungs burned, but I couldn't move. Then, slowly its hand rose, not in farewell, but in a call, as if it knew that, sooner or later, I would return.